And this is not formal at all. I've done this really drunk one time. So
Okay.
there's no way you can do it worse than that.
Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name is Josh Lindell. I'm a grad student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with...
I'm Dr. Kimberly Plomp. I am a bioarchaeologist. I study the human skeleton, health and disease, and evolution.
I'm Rob Rownd. I'm a filmmaker and actor and a professor at the University of Tokyo's Film Institute. And more importantly, for this podcast, I am ADD in archaeology with a specialization in landscape and remote sensing.
Thanks for joining us, Rob. Regular listeners will know Ross is away again, so thanks for filling in. The movie we are going to review today is The Dig from 2021. Was this your choice, Rob?
It was.
Good choice.
Yeah, it's well, spoil it enough right off the top. This is one of my favorite archaeology movies, possibly the best archaeology movie I think ever made. It's not a flawless movie. We'll get into it, but I love this movie.
I was worried it was too serious for your show, but then again, I watched it again and I was just like, nah, I really want to talk about it. It's such a good show. It's really terrific.
Can I ask you to summarize this movie for us in case our listeners haven't seen it?
Okay, this is a British film. It is about World War II is about to open fire. The Nazis have moved into Poland. The king has given them an ultimatum. Everything looks bleak. While the IRA is practicing overhead, nice recurring motif for fear coming in. The widowed owner of an estate, which is called Sutton Hoo, is hired an archaeologist who is a crusty old man and a very really educated fellow, but a clever wit, who is to dig up a couple of mounds, which she suspects will yield some kind of artifact on her property. He is the quote unquote excavator in the eyes of the Oxford academics who show up about a third of the way through the film to take over when something of significance is found. But he's a very, very charming guy. He's a very, very serious guy, and he's played wonderfully by Ralph Fiennes, who got the Suffolk accent down perfectly. And the rest of the movie just kind of takes off from there in terms of tone, in terms of style. This is a period piece, but nothing is aggressively period about it. The clothing is all believable. Anytime before 1970, you could walk through the British countryside and see somebody wearing exactly those outfits. The manners are well done. Because it's British, it is, of course, a film about class. It is a film about privilege. It is a film about exclusion. And all of that is addressed here very, very comfortably as they work through the story. The focus is the dig and uncovering what turns out to be a Saxon. Whoop, spoiler alert.
We can spoiler it. We can spoil it. We spoil it every time. We never add the spoiler alert up top anymore. I don't know if we need to do that for new listeners, but we do review the entire movie from beginning to end, so we do spoil every movie we talk about. Okay, so basically three big pluses, thumbs up. If you're the sort of person that really hates getting spoiled, stop listening. Go rent the movie. It's on Netflix in Asia right now, so go watch it. It's about an hour 50 something, and it's well worth your time. And then come back and pick it up while we dissect it. It is a true story of one of the most famous archaeological excavations of all time. So if you don't know what's happening by the end of it, like if the movie isn't spoiled before you go into it, you haven't been paying attention to archaeology, I think.
Right. And I kind of came into this backwards because it was just on Netflix one night, and my wife and I sat down to watch it. And then they got to the reveal, and we both looked at each other and went, "Oh my God, it's that boat and the burial and the helmet." And it just keeps going. What they discover is basically the first evidence of sophistication in Anglo-Saxon culture, right? They were seen as the dark times, they were seen as the Middle Ages, and the Saxons were basically brutes who couldn't hang with the Vikings and just got whooped like stepchildren and lost control of the country. And we see for the very first time, as you look at this mound, how sophisticated their culture must have been. There's trade artifacts from everywhere, from Byzantium There's some Norse stuff. There's some glass from Sri Lanka, of all places. There's some jewelry from Sri Lanka. Obviously, this is a connected. This is a community connected to the outside world in a much, much more sophisticated way than believed. And this is an allegory or a metaphor for what's going on in the lives of the characters. There is, if you've ever watched Upstairs, Downstairs, and Downton Abbey as a stuff, this is all about that level of class. There's servants and there is a leisure class. There is a pompous academic archaeologist who winds up saying one of the most profound things in the movie about 2/3 of the way through, and he sort of redeems himself, and then the next scene he's an absolute jerk off again. So it kind of is a very, very accurate portrayal of British cultural life in the rural areas. And just to keep you all on our toes about life and death and our fascination with death and archaeology, half the characters are dying, very obviously dying, although being British, they never talk about it. The woman has some sort of a heart situation. She had rheumatic fever as a kid. It's all revealed through people walking along and suddenly getting winded at a point where it makes no sense to get winded unless you're really, really sick. The woman who plays Mrs. Petty, the widow, is just really remarkable in terms of a very subtle, understated performance. But of course, she's 30 years younger than the actual person in real life.
Yeah.
But it's a movie, and that's sort of how things work in a movie, So to make a long story short, and it is a wonderfully told story, even though it is long and very complicated, eventually, as she is getting sicker and sicker as the film goes on, she almost has an affair with Ray Fiennes' character, but doesn't because, well, they're British and it was a given time. One of the younger archaeologists brings his wife along, and his wife turns out to realize that her new husband is probably not particularly heterosexual, and gives a preview of her marriage and leaves him for a dashing young RAF to be pilot. It is truly a fairy tale on that level. The acting is so outstandingly understated and through line. Every single character you see on the screen is a full flesh and blood three-dimensional character. The butler has an internal life. You watch him open the door and you watch him limp around. 5 scenes later, the woman asks, how's your leg today? And suddenly everything makes sense. It's a really, really subtle dissection of what English country life and archaeology in terms of the politics of archaeology. At the end of the day, she gives the finds, which are spectacular. She gives the finds away to the British Museum, and that is with the idea that they are going to be able to be seen by the greatest number of people if they're housed there. If you're going to London, this is something you got to see. This is absolutely some of the best public archaeology around. The stuff they found was almost perfectly preserved in a really, really strange way. The gold still looks like it was just polished, it came out of the mint. It's wonderful. It's very, very detailed in terms of what it presents. And what I like about the film is it also shows the reality of archaeology, that it's boring as hell for long, long stretches of time. And then suddenly a world opens up and you're usually on your knees scraping away with a paintbrush or a wooden stick or whatever. And gradually this piece of somebody else's reality comes to life right in front of your eyes. And it's such a wonderful, wonderful moment. So this does that really well. And the film ends with World War II beginning. The lovers are separating after promising to find each other after the war. We'll see. It doesn't look good. The finds go into the tube station, the subway in the UK, to avoid the bombing. After the bombing, they open in, I believe it's 1949, after they've rebuilt the museum, because the British Museum was largely trashed during World War II, during the raids. And it opens up again, and it's got a very interesting note that the character, Basil Brown, the one played by Ray Fiennes, isn't mentioned in 1949. It's only about 1975 that he starts to get recognized as the person responsible for all of that. That is a construction from the filmmakers. In real life, Pritchett, sorry, I've forgotten his name, the academic, who is a pompous arse, does mention him in his writing, in his books, and credits him with having done a wonderful job of excavation and that sort of thing. So it's a movie, right? It's a movie. It's flawed. If it was actual, documentary footage of the excavation, it would be boring to a general audience, and just nobody would watch the film. So I like this film a lot, although I do concede it has a lot of flaws and a lot of sort of over exaggerations, because it creates the vision of the feeling, the vibe of what a successful archaeological adventure is, right? The moment of wonder, the moment of fear, and then fighting that commences as soon as it's apparent that whatever this stuff is, it's going to have massive scientific value. Kind of wonder what happened when Trigonabor was dug out. Suddenly somebody somewhere got in a fight because it stayed where it was, right? It's the first African find that mostly stayed in Africa.
So normally the first thing we do after we summarize the movie is to nitpick the historical or scientific inaccuracies. Usually we're nitpicking inaccuracies about the portrayal of the ancient past. In this one, this is a true story. So I guess the inaccuracies that we can mainly nitpick are inaccuracies in the story itself compared to what actually happened in 1939. There are a few. Some of them are kind of mundane. Some of them are pretty important. So does anybody want to start off with some inaccuracies in this movie?
It looks like Rob is just itching to.
Okay. Like I said, it's a time lapse, right? It's set up as this is one long summer in which they pull this boat out of the earth, and then somebody accidentally steps on the roof of the chamber that holds all the burial goods, and then whoa, and then everybody's finding everything up, and 3 minutes later, somebody is brushing off a belt buckle which is made out of solid gold with some sort of a crested jewel stone in the middle. No, sorry, didn't happen. What happened was 2 years of archaeology. The first year was spent pulling up the smaller mounds, which is kind of normal practice, because before you get to the big event, you want to go, let's figure out as much as we possibly can about what might be here, so we can prepare for what we're going to find. Do we need special gear? Do we need somebody who does X-ray something? Do we need X-fluorescence as we go in? Is there something who's going to give us an idea? Time is going to be very difficult to find out without the soil. What do we want to do? So it really took 2 years. The first year, there was hints of everything. They found the rivets of the ship. They found contemporaneous metal. They found 3 or 4 body parts, just stray bones here and there, and some wood, some pottery, and stuff like that. And then in the second season, with the war coming, they found everything that they packed up and took to London, and it all went out like that. So that's one thing, one pick to dig, or one nit to pick.
That would have been an extensive dig to do over one summer, if that had been.
Yeah.
Was it true that because in the movie there was that scene where the Mrs. Pretty was going to go into the part that they'd excavated and they hadn't stabilized the walls yet of the entrance, and he said, "Don't go in; it's not safe." And then he went in and then got it collapsed on him. Was that true? Did that happen?
There's no record of that occurring. There's no I mean, the walls collapsed, and they're referred to as a slight collapse, section 4, and then somebody was in a hurry before they put in the scaffolding and that sort of thing, but nothing major. There was no mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. What's interesting about those moments, though, is that although it looks like this incredibly realistic film, very naturalistic presentation, all of that stuff is shot out of sequence, and they've cut together. Events happen 2 and 3 times. They pull him across on the blue canvas, which is a really, really dramatic thing, but then they give him mouth to mouth and they clean his mouth out, and then they bring him again. So they're never really very literal with the truth in terms of, I'm sorry, very literal with time,
right,
as they go across stuff. They play the drama, but very, very, it just reminded me of chamber music. It's just, there's 4 voices going on, and this is what they're doing. And then they'll do something interesting, and then they'll repeat it, but they'll only do one sort of experiment visually or temporally at a time. So
interesting. We should say that the reason why Rob knows so much and can see it this way is that he actually, for his PhD, is making movies about archaeological sites and excavations.
I am, and I'll be honest, a lot of it is about trying to like create drama
Right.
where none occurs.
Yes.
You know,
I mean, that's essentially all of Time Team, right? That British TV show about excavations.
yeah. I don't want to do that, right? That's not on the agenda. But there are other cards to play.
Mm.
There's also like in this film they play with the characters, dramatis personnel. There's the dashing young RAF pilot to be, who is the photographer and the falls in love with a lonely married woman. Doesn't exist in real life. She didn't have a cousin who came in to help. The photographs were actually taken by two women who worked on the dig, who never appear in the show. In real life, there was 3 or 4 women and about 4 different men, and they've cut it down to the husband, the wife, the husband's ex-boyfriend, and one other figure, and then 2 people from the house who join in for the heavy lifting.
Yeah. We find quite often that they kind of shoehorn in love stories, right? I mean, even in The Hobbit, they shoot in a love story.
Yeah, Rosie Cotton dancing.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, not really there. I know, but I can imagine the conversation that happened with the studio executive who went, "Somebody's got to fall in love."
Yeah, there has to be a sex scene.
No.
You can't just be straight archaeology.
Right, and of course it's the young woman in the bathtub.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's BBC sexuality is breasts. That's kind of as far as it goes with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm.
We should say this movie is based on a novel from 2007 by John Preston of the same name. Has any of us read this novel? I haven't.
I did, actually.
It's on my bookcase.
Okay. It's worth it. It's written in the form of like diary entries or testimony.
Mm-hmm.
It's not clear which is which. But every character has a page or two to describe events, and then another character comes in and describes the same. And it's a fun style because you get things are revealed from 2 and 3 different points of view. And that gives you a lot of insight into what's going on. And like the film itself, they're nonlinear. They're just things suddenly occur, and then they take a step back and ramp up and fill in the blanks with it.
Yeah.
So highly recommend the novel too.
Cool. I'm reading Dracula right now, and it's the same all through journal entries and letters and such.
There's a few other little things. I mean, there's a lot of tiny little inaccuracies. There's a few things that they add into the movie that are also not real. Like there's a dramatic scene where a Spitfire crashes into presumably the river nearby, and Rory Lomax has to go rescue him. That never happened. Apparently a B-17 bomber did crash somewhere nearby years later, but it didn't overlap with the excavation. So that's totally made up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know enough about the actual relationships of people, but as far as I understand it, this sort of disrespect from Charles Phillips to Basil Brown was pretty much constructed. There's a quote from National Trust website that says the relationship between Charles Phillips and Basil Brown was one of mutual respect. Charles Phillips was complimentary towards the careful way Basil Brown had excavated the ship. And like you said, Charles Phillips, they've changed this character a lot because he's played by a 60-year-old actor, but was actually in his 30s at the time. So
interesting.
They've done that to build up the tension a lot, I think, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's like everybody, like the couple, he comes across as being 10, 15 years older than her. In reality, he was like 2.5. Very, very common, very, very sort of, and they met as students and they fell in love as students and they got married as soon as they graduated. And she was already better than him, like very experienced and well regarded as a digger and as a writer. And in the lab, such as the lab was in the 30s. So that's but the question becomes, I'm trying to tell this story. I'm trying to tell this story about class. I'm trying to tell this story about privilege. How do you do that and then tell the reality when it doesn't match what you're trying to convey?
Yeah.
So it's easy to think about this as like a, some grand conspiracy of, well, we're going to, blah, 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 but it's like you're sitting at the typewriter and you're going, I have to get this across, and this across. How do I do that?
Yeah.
And having a marriage break up and then a mysterious lover come in, that's popcorn eating time.
Well, yeah. And one that's going to his foreshadowed death with the crash of the plane, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And the woman did die in 1942, so she never saw the opening 7 years later, I guess.
Right.
7 or 8 years later. So that is enough tragedy in and of itself.
Yeah.
But it would be curious. I kind of wonder what happened to Basil Brown after all of this, because after you've dug this thing up, I would think you're in pretty high regard and pretty much in demand.
Yeah, you should be.
Yeah.
I mean, any university should be trying to give him honorary degrees or whatever, right? They did that back then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then to teach excavation.
Yeah.
How do you, because he published a book on astronomy, like reading constellations and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and he's a grumpy old British, guy, but that was my college experience. So yeah, it did kind of make sense.
Where did you go to college again?
I went to college. I went to a year abroad in London.
Okay.
Where I had a bunch of custodial, and I was doing like art studies, like the equivalent, not production, but just general humanities courses and then acting courses as well. And they were a bunch of people who wrote for the Guardian part-time and then taught part-time, and that was their sort of milieu. So that character was really, really familiar, and I found that with most of these characters, they were there was a level of in British writing and both in novels and in movies, there's an attempt to always create whole people, right? Nobody's ever like a cartoony villain or Dudley Do-Right or a naive person. There's not a whole lot of naive people in British fiction. Everybody's always sort of vaguely self-aware, and over the course of the events of the story, they become more aware, and that's part of the fun of this. I saw people I work with in this movie. I saw people I know from other excavations and conferences and what do you have, sort of thing. No, we can't name names, but you.
When he said the words, because in the movie, the female character, the archaeologist, was the first one to find the piece of gold. And the guy who played Basil, he said, "Oh, you clever girl." And just for that split second, I thought maybe he was the same guy that said that in Jurassic Park. And I had to look up the actor because they look the same, but it's not. It's not. I was like, that would have been such a good, what did they call it when you put in things like that? A peanut? Easter egg. Easter egg.
Easter egg.
Easter egg. Yeah. Easter egg, yeah. Ray Fiennes and the actor was Australian guy.
Yeah. They look quite similar.
Sam Neill. Yeah, they're both. Those are
no. Yeah, it wasn't Sam Neill. It was the guy that gets
the character
eaten.
Was Robert Muldoon.
Yeah.
I don't know the actor's name.
The guy that gets eaten by the raptors.
The South African game warden.
Who's a clever girl.
Ah, okay.
It definitely made me want to get out and dig, but I also, watching it, I was like, oh, I didn't do very many, but the times that I did go on a dig in Britain and the temperature was just so mild, as opposed to here where it's so hot. But then the digs that I was on also got rained out. So we spent a lot of the time sitting in a metal storage container waiting for the rains to pass, right?
Ah, okay.
So that felt very real.
The actor who played Muldoon in Jurassic Park is Bob Peck. I don't know anything else he was in.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to be in anything else after that role.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this movie, when you look up reviews from archaeologists, the main thing that people are upset about is the depiction of Peggy Piggot. We've talked about this already, but we might as well outline everything that they did wrong here. So they presented her as only being hired because she was small enough that she could walk on the site without damaging things. And that's not true. She was already a well-respected archaeologist at the time. They depict her as being just sort of tagging along with her husband, who is much older and much more respected as an archaeologist. And that's not true. They had both been students at the same time. They were only 2 years apart. They have this fictional love interest, Rory Lomax, Edith Pretty's cousin, who didn't really exist, and he replaces two women characters who are Mercy Lack and Barbara Wagstaff, who were two of the people who took photographs at the site. There were some other people who also took photographs. They present Stuart Piggot as closeted gay, which there's no evidence of that. They depict them as being on their honeymoon, having just come back from their honeymoon, but they'd already been married for 3 years when this excavation took place, so they weren't newlyweds. They also basically have them break up within the movie, but they were married until 1956. So I don't necessarily, that doesn't mean they were happily married the whole time, but
true.
There really isn't any evidence that they were not happily married at the time this movie took place. In fact, there's a website, Stuart Piggot Poetry, stuart-piggot-poetry.com, where apparently after his death, all of his poetry went to a museum. He wrote a bunch of poems in his life. He's got a ton of poems he wrote to Peggy, so he did seem to really be in love with her. And the movie, we've talked about why the movie did this. You need to have this romance subplot, right? But what they did to get this romance subplot in is they got rid of all of this good female representation to turn this female character into just a romance subplot. Because they took Peggy Piggot, who is a well-respected archaeologist, and took that away from her, made her just a man's wife, and a romance subplots, woman. They got rid of two other very strong female characters who were these photographers and just wrote them out of the movie. And what they did is they wrote this plot that feels like it makes sense to the time. It feels like in the 1930s, women didn't have the rights that they have today because we hadn't gone through the third wave of feminism. And so when people watch this movie, they're like, yeah, that tracks. That's what the 1930s were like for women. It feels accurate, but in reality, there were lots of strong female characters in this story that the book and the movie just get rid of. And that's something that a lot of people are upset about because they've done a disservice to like 4 different people in this story to add this sort of bland subplot for the ladies, I guess, this romance subplot, right?
Just imagine, so you're on this amazing archaeological dig, and then you find out either you're a ghost and you find out, or you're still alive and you find out, I don't know, that they've made this movie about it. And so you're so excited. But then they find out that you and your friend that were on it got, no, we replaced you guys with one man. And then you and your husband were on it. You guys were in love and had a good marriage. But no, actually, they've made it so that your husband is like closeted homosexual who's not really invested in the marriage, and then you have to fall in love with this RFA guy, and just it would just be so weird when you were like, but that was our lives. Like, oh, it's horrible.
Peggy, I'm sorry, but you're 22 years old.
Yeah.
You haven't done anything in life. No degrees. No publications. Or no one that somebody condescendingly read. But yeah, I'm sorry, kid.
Yeah.
It's a movie. Okay, I'm sorry about that, kid. That's just not how it works.
Unfortunately, it did pass. Fortunately, it passed the Bechdel test because they did talk about her skirt. The 2 women talked about her skirt.
Right. Yeah.
But Rob, you would be surprised. I don't know if you pay attention when you watch movies about the Bechdel test, but how many don't, with multiple female characters in it, and they still doesn't pass the Bechdel test.
But are you really surprised? I mean, that's just kind of how patriarchy functions.
It's just the extent of it is surprising.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I like archaeology is there have been this tradition of very, very strong independent theorists and diggers who happen to be women, and it's always given a flavor to it. I mean, they're ignored by a lot of guys, but, and like guys I'm emphasizing in particular, but they are there. They're there and they do contribute, and they're mentors, and they have graduate students, and they go forward. I think as long as we're going to tell stories that have to have romance, that's going to be a function of it. Maybe if somebody, it would be great to come up with a new way to tell stories about people who are really clever. Because of what I see, in addition to this is just one aspect of dumbing down everybody in a really clever film. You know, a film about clever people, but we have to reduce their contradictions. We have to reduce their arguments to the core of what is the story. And in this case, they adopt those people out. I think it would have been interesting to have the women photographing the stuff that goes on, and then you could have intercut the photographs with the narrative. Nobody called me about that. Could have. I would have been there and read the script and gone, if I'd shot this or edited this, it would have gone, why don't we try this? See if it kind of interests me. Because it's a snapshot. You know, what they're doing with the beginning of the scenes where there's just, you hear voiceover and then you realize the actors aren't talking. They're just looking at each other. And that's happened after the conversation was going underneath their shots. That's a great moment. But if you're going to be that open visually, you could have done stuff with, he's got the camera, the Rolex, what is it called? The Rolleiflex with the two lenses, one on top of each other and the hand crank on the side. There's such a look to those things, that square aspect ratio that they have and that really contrasty black and white film that comes out of them. All kinds of things could have been done. You know, you even could have put Super 8 in it because that did exist at that time as an capture film. I just kind of a missed opportunity. Then again, just to say the contrarian idea, it's a very, very cool, very, very subtle visual presentation. Most of the meaning is carried in expression and in dialogue, but even more in expression. Like Ray Fiennes spends a lot of time just looking, and you read his face because he's such a good actor. The woman, Mrs. Pretty, the Carrie
Mulligan.
Carrie Mulligan, Shirley Down, yeah. Equally good. But she's always got this sadness about her.
Yes.
But then she's reading Howard Carter. She comes up and has intelligent conversations with this very gruff man. So she's not afraid of shit. She's not afraid of people as a character. That is something that was a missed opportunity as well. You know, I mean, she's lonely, she's bored. But they kind of hint that there's going to be this tiny romance thing that happens between those two. When he comes to dinner, his wife suddenly appears. There's sort of, they open the door, just a little bit about that occurring, and then it closes again because his wife shows up and he sends his apologies rather than comes over for dinner when she's getting very, very dressed up. So that's all they want to do, right? That's all that they can conceive of doing with this character at that time.
I just find it also annoying, though, like just the idea that when she invited him over for dinner, that it had to have a romantic or sexual undertone. When, like, he's an archaeologist she hired to dig in her land. Like, of course you're going to invite him for dinner. You want to talk to him about everything. Like, you know, it doesn't always, every single female-male interaction doesn't have to be romantic or sexual.
Quite right. I also thought it was odd. Another missed opportunity is I would have stuck them at the same table every night. Then you've got this arc to build.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and the kid gets annoying. And, you know, the kid hasn't had a father figure in forever. Maybe he and the little boy are playing chess or something in the evening. There's, all that stuff. It's directorial choice, but it's kind of formulaic if you think about it in these terms. There's a lot of stuff that's let go of that's not brought out that could have been brought out. I actually would have liked to have seen this as one of those like 3 and 4 part series that they do.
The limited series. That would have been good.
Yeah, that would have been good fun. And we could still do that if there's like a stray young executive listening to this podcast story, and we could come along as the authority board. You know, you want to know the authenticity. We've got about 8 people we could hook you up with. So it would really be a good story, and we could all do cameos.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know. All right.
I want to play Peggy.
Call me. Oh. I'm going to play the guy that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But he's scared to death. He's scared to death with going to war because that's another, you know. Yeah. It's a nice, simple film, but it doesn't do the events that occurred. And I think, from my understanding of the people that were in the actual events, I think it really does them justice in terms of who they were and how complicated and interesting the story could have been.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
So
there's one thing that this movie does that I really don't like, and it's a common movie thing. There may or may not have been truth to it in reality, but if you're the kind of person who leans in the right way, it's got this anti-intellectual bent to it, right? It's an underdog story where Basil Brown is not an archaeologist. He's an excavator, as he always corrects, right? He's self-taught or taught by his father. He doesn't have formal archaeological training. And they pit him against the establishment, against the mainstream archaeologists from the museums who are making fun of him because he's working on this site where nobody thought there was going to be anything good. And up until they find something good, they're dismissing him. They're like, why are you wasting your time working here? And then they find it and they're like, okay, now we're taking over because we're the real archaeologists.
Yeah.
And I believe a lot of this tension is built up for the movie because, as we saw, Charles Phillips seems, from what I've read, seems to have respected the work that Basil Brown did, even though he did take over once they discovered how important the site was, but Basil Brown kept working with him. And if you're just watching the movie, this is a good device for the movie. But if you're somebody who's into the kind of pseudo-archaeology stuff that we sometimes talk about in this movie, if you're a fan of Graham Hancock or that kind of stuff, this mentality plays into this position that mainstream archaeologists are too arrogant. They don't actually know anything. And it's these underdogs that can come in with no real training, but they know the truth. And I'm sure the movie isn't trying to send this message, but I definitely feel that if for a certain number of people who already have this feeling, the movie is playing right into that. And I wonder if either of you picked up on that.
A little bit, yeah. Rob?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was interesting because, first of all, Basil says things, makes observations which are very, very clearly contradict any sort of opinion of he's not sophisticated. And then the things other characters say about him, he's written a book. He's well read on everything. He reads Latin and Greek. I mean, he's dead languages up on me on that level. I mean, he's a well-rounded individual. And then the guy, the provincial museum guy from the Ipswich Museum, is almost begging him to come back to work. I mean, it's very clear that he values what Basil does, but he doesn't want to be Basil's equal. I guess is a way to read that. He doesn't want to be perceived on that level. This is also muddied, and actually, this is one of my favorite bits. Is when the pompous guy says these people had art, they had culture. This changes the fact that we looked at them as the barbarians, and there's a fair amount of othering that goes on in archaeology. I mean, let's be honest. We're digging through, and a lot of the times our surprise should be surprising ourselves from what we were assuming until we got to spit 17 and suddenly went, oh, wow, okay, that's different. This is a hearth and this means this and this. Yeah, okay. Those stones were used to heat it up, so they boiled water. So then skin bag is gone, but there's an element of diet here. There's an element of being aware of nutrition. There's an element of being aware of native medicine. They were sophisticated, and that's still a surprise. That to me, that's a real shame.
Yeah.
That there's this sense of arrogance in modern people looking back and thinking that they had language, but what did they do with it? They might have written some of the most amazing oral poetry that we've ever conceived of.
Yeah, definitely.
And we don't have a record of it. So yeah. I think it's a little more complicated that it's anti-intellectual. It's more the fact that there are a lot of people who feel they don't get heard, right? There are a lot of like us. There are people I dig with here in the Philippines who tell me all kinds of stuff when I'm sitting drinking beer with them late at night, and they're very, very, very knowledgeable and very skilled people, but they're not part of the conversation that takes place around the pit, with the professionals.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier on, it's a movie about class, and the anti-intellectualism isn't intentionally written in the movie. It just sort of is tied up with that classism accidentally, sort of, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess we just agree to disagree that for me, that's about privilege. Oh dear boy, you didn't go to Eton. You can't say this.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm certainly not. Yeah.
That's what the movie is doing. I just think that like there's a small number of people who are going to pick up on this and they're going to think this supports Graham Hancock. If Basil Brown can do this, then Graham Hancock is right as well, right? I know that most people aren't going to see that, but it's just because I spend so much time looking at pseudo-archaeology. I know somebody's watching this and getting that feeling from it, right?
Yeah.
Josh, I'm going to invite you to a panel we're doing in November of 2026. You are tailor-made for.
I was going to invite him to it. Yeah.
Ooh.
So you're in. You're in.
In Indonesia.
But it's Indonesia. I forgot this. What is the city set? Did they agree? It's not Jakarta.
It's not Jakarta, but yeah, they did agree. I don't remember where it is.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
No, we were actually going to address that. Like, what should be the exchange, the dialogue between pseudo archaeology and mainstream archaeology? There's a lot to be. We also have to learn how to teach archaeology to the general public better.
Yeah, we've said that a few times. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We actually talked about when Joe Rogan and Flint Dibble when they talked. Yeah. We did that as an episode. That's pretty interesting. We got quite a few comments on our YouTube about it.
Yeah, Flint Dibble might just be the best name for an archaeologist ever, but other than that,
yeah.
Or he's a private detective. Either one works. So works out pretty well.
And the hat would work for either. So
yeah, it would. It would actually.
What do we think about the depiction of actual archaeological practice in this movie? Because, archaeological techniques are very different today than they were in 1939. Do we think that the way they're doing archaeology as depicted looks accurate to the way they would have done it at the time?
Probably. I mean, they weren't surveying or measuring or gridding or anything. They look like they were just kind of chose one spot to dig and then dig back.
Right.
I don't know. I haven't read any of the site reports that far back. Have you, Rob?
No, me neither. I was kind of surprised with the way they exposed the boat, and it was all basically the ribs of the boat were like stained earth, and that's all at this point. There was no wood material. And they exposed it like textbook. It was just perfectly done.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a movie, but it was a moment where I sort of went, boy, that's like fairy dust there. I don't know if that's if people were aware of that at that point, then that's news to me. Yeah, because the photographs I've seen from that time, kind of, they would just slice the boat in half, and more often than not. I know we really put an emphasis on physical continuity as much as we possibly can, particularly with human remains, but also things like boats. So I don't know, that I think that was idealized in a pretty basic level.
There are lots of photos, as we said, taken by those two photographers, and from the photos that I've seen, they look very much like what the ship looks like in the movie, even though, like you said, there actually was no wood left. It was just stained dirt that they're exposing. But there's one on Wikipedia for the Sutton Hoo page where you can see it. It's black and white, but it really does look very much like it looked in the movie. So at least that seems correct.
Yeah, they did a good job.
A lot of the stuff, any wood or anything organic didn't remain. Like there was presumably a burial in this ship, but there was no actual human remains in the main ship. It's just a stain with the sword and shield and armor around it that they're interpreting as the leftovers of the human body.
Yeah.
Have they preserved this? Like, can you go into the site and see this?
You can go to the site, but they reburied the ship to preserve it. I don't think they ever excavated it again. I'm not sure.
Right.
Oh, no, they did go back in late 1970s, like 1978, I think. And I didn't catch the name of the archaeologist, but they went back and they opened up the main thing again and didn't find a whole lot. So they did a fairly good job. They went underneath the boat, so they sacrificed the integrity of the boat. There was a little bit of a problem with crushing when they repacked it, when they did the backfill, because they were in a hurry because the war was really, really breathing down their necks. So they made the executive decision to go underneath it, and that wound up being mostly fallow, and except for a few stray metal pieces, etc. They opened up all the small ones, and they did a total of 17 trenches, and they found one, two, three, four different bodies. They found some cremations, bowls with cremated remains in them, and then they found some stray odd pieces of jewelry as well. So there was a look at some stuff, and they think they got it all, but they never found like the key body. Like there should have been a body in the big boat, right?
Right. Yeah.
They think it's the name of a king I can't pronounce. But his first name is with R.
Redvold.
Sounds good. Yeah, Redvold. Yeah. Or Rudolph, one of the two. But it seems like given the timestamp on the coins, it was probably him. You know, so
unless they lost his body, and it was just a symbolic burial.
They did do that too. I don't. Gosh, I'm not sure. Not sure how that worked. I would say it's kind of hard to say there's anything unsuccessful about this excavation. Seems like they pretty much, even with the limited technology they had at the time and methodological practices changing, they did. It's a very, very thorough, like textbook, study how this was done to understand how to dig up that particular soil. So I'm pretty, very impressed with this. I think we missed something because we've gotten too lab-centric at this point, or perhaps too lab-centric at this point. And we missed some of the romance of creating this really perfect thing.
Romance can happen in the lab too.
I'm alone with Photoshop. What do you want me to, it's not that much of a discovery process.
Well, let me tell you why this is I think my favorite archaeology movie, and possibly, I think, one of the best archaeology movies ever made. I teach a course that I talk about all the time called Archaeology and Popular Culture. And at the beginning of that course, I ask my students, what is the value of archaeology to our society? And it's a difficult question to answer. I think a lot of archaeologists don't really think about this question too much, because archaeologists, we just like doing archaeology, right? I didn't get into archaeology because I wanted to make society better. I just got into archaeology because I like bones and I like digging up stuff, right? I like doing science.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to ask this question, you start to explore so many different little fingers of what archaeology is really for. But when you boil it down, what archaeology is really for, the real value of archaeology that we get to in my course, is storytelling, origin stories, and building identity, right? And this movie gets into all of that side of what archaeology is for. One of the really interesting things about this movie is, if you think about Sutton Hoo, if you know about it, you're probably going to think about the Sutton Hoo helmet, which is very distinct looking. It's got a face mask to it that sort of has a mustache. I think I think it's made of iron or something, but it's got this gold trim that really pops. If you know about Sutton Hoo, you're probably thinking about that helmet. We never see it in the movie. They've hidden the most dramatic treasure, and you don't actually see it in the movie, right?
True, yeah.
And so the movie, like any other archaeology movie, is treasure hunting. Indiana Jones, Uncharted, Tomb Raider, National Treasure. When you think about archaeology in movies, it's a treasure hunt. And this movie is totally the opposite. They are on a treasure hunt. They find one of the most amazing treasures that archaeologists have found in England. And the movie ignores that. It's not about the treasure. It's about something else. And what it's about is questions of legacy, mainly, right? All the characters, like you said, everybody's dying. Everybody's dealing with what happens after I die. And then they parallel this to these Anglo-Saxons were thinking about the same thing. What happens to us after we die? They were making these burials because they're building up a legacy. And then this archaeological finding, apart from the actual treasures, which were really cool and valuable, it was about building a national identity for England, for the United Kingdom, right? It was, this is our legacy. This is our past. This tells us who we are today. And so when you put that all together, the movie is really getting at the real value of archaeology, which almost every other Hollywood movie doesn't mention at all, right? It's always about the treasure or the adventure, but in this movie, it's about identity and legacy and tradition and stuff like that, which I think is really interesting and really valuable to present archaeology in that way, in a way that we don't usually see in movies.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I hadn't the part about the helmet just went right over my head. Yeah, I never really, it doesn't come up. And in a conventional movie and something geared towards a less thoughtful audience, there would have been that moment of, even though it came in shards and they had to reassemble it over the course of 2.5 years, but there would have been that moment of picking up the chalice and being at the last word. Yeah, superimposing yourself in there.
They do have that moment, but the treasure that they find is just a single coin. They say it's a Merovingian tremesis, and I had to look it up. I don't even know what a Merovingian tremesis is, but it's a coin. It's got a date on it. That's why it's important.
Yeah.
It's gold, so I mean gold doesn't corrode. So when you find gold archaeologically, I've never found gold archaeologically because I do the Paleolithic, but when you find gold, it really shines because it doesn't corrode. So they have that moment where they find the thing that really is a treasure and really is very important. And then after they find it, they start to find more gold treasures. But the focus is on just about the most mundane possible golden treasure, which is a single tiny little coin, right?
Yeah. I agree. That's a great reading of that. And then it's a bridle. So maybe that's a belt and a buckle. Maybe that's a horse thing. You're not really sure. And they don't bother to look at individual pieces. It just starts coming.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's something over here, there's something over here. And that's a really interesting thing. Then there's a side note is these are Anglo-Saxon burials and they're about to fight the Germans.
Yeah.
Kind of an interesting, side note. Yeah. And genetically, they're still Anglo-Saxons primarily, with a bit of Viking and other things.
And indigenous Britain. I did a paper looking at cranial morphology of the base of the skull, looking at whether Anglo-Saxon England was mainly like a replacement migration or an integration. And it seems to be about 50-50, honestly. Indigenous Britons from like Romano-British type and people coming in from the continent.
Okay.
So it wasn't probably not like the Great War and replacement that has kind of been mythicized, right? It was more just people moving, people getting married, people adapting,
learning a new language and getting on with it. Yeah, sort of like what people. Yeah.
Do we have anything else we want to say about this movie? Anything else in our notes?
I don't think so. I mean, this is the thing. It's like the bad movies are always the easiest to talk about. And then the good movies, you're like, yeah, no, it was good.
This is a great movie for quotes. I don't know if you had any favorite quotes from this movie.
I think so.
I think I've spiced them in over the course of the time.
One of the big ones is Ralph Fiennes tells Carey Mulligan, "From the first human handprint on a cave wall, we are part of something continuous." I like that one.
Oh.
Because it's really tying in that, the point of archaeology is, telling us where we came from, building up identities, and really getting to the point of archaeology rather than just being a treasure hunt or an adventure movie.
Yeah. Which is what his wife says, right? Is that the job isn't about him getting recognition or fame or anything. It's about securing the past or the future.
Yeah.
Identity and
that's another thing is, in my class, we use a book by Cornelius Holtorf, and his whole thesis in this book is that archaeology really isn't about the past at all. It really is about building our own identities in the present. And that's also what Ralph Fiennes says, or what his wife says that he has said in this movie, is that archaeology isn't about the past. It's about the future. It's about telling the future who you were, right?
Right.
Well, thanks for coming on, Rob.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah,
You should come on again.
I have a request if you're interested. Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Okay.
Ooh, yeah, let's do it.
I would be game for that. That is the movie that made me want to become an actor, not an archaeologist. For that
an actor.
That scene where they're dancing with the horses and they're running through, and somebody's with a coconut. That was something. When I was 7 years old, I saw that and went, I want to do that when I grow up.
I want to do that.
Just that moment, because this whole room was just laughing at the same time, and it was like, and they were just playing it totally deadpan. And I was like, okay, this is it for me. Since discovered it's maybe the most intelligent, stupid movie ever made. So,
well, we'll have to wait for Ross for that one because he'll love it.
Okay,
I'd love to do it. But the four of us, that would be great.
That would be a good time. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Do you have any social media or any projects that people can see that you'd like to let people know about?
Gosh, no, I'm not really a social media person, to tell you the truth. I kind of, if you go halfway into that stuff I'm a character actor, so I'm seen in a lot of stuff. And if I'm on social media, I have to be that actor, professional person on social media.
Right.
And I kind of find that to be a chore, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, I have one, and, Kim is a friend of mine on Facebook and all that. And I post about life and politics and stuff, but I don't really want to extend my career into that. I go out and do promo on movies when I'm in a new movie. Oh, by the way, I'm in a new movie. It's, I'm in a movie called CISA, which will be out in September. And I'm in a movie called Cinemartyrs, which is a tongue-in-cheek look at the Philippine-American War and the mythologizing of. Sorry, Delano is the director. And it'll be a Cinemalaya film, and it'll get general release, and it'll probably be released either on the Filipino network in the United States, or maybe if we get lucky, Netflix. See?
Cool. Sounds good.
Well, you'll have to come on and talk to us about that if you
Sure.
After it's out,
yeah.
After it's out, yeah.
Do you have questions, comments, or movie requests? We want to hear from you. Find us on Blue Sky and Facebook at SOTSA Podcast. Send us an email to screensofthestonage@gmail.com or visit our website at screensofthestoneage.com.